Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of Inside Edge. We are here for a very, very important topic. In the last, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, I've received multiple queries. Should I join this B school? How good are IIM LKI? Is SPJIMR as good as or better than IIM LKI? How good is FMS? Is it better than IIM ABC? Maybe should I appear for CAT again? Or let's give GMAT and try for ISB. There are thousands of questions. Should I join a newer IIM? How good is a newer? How good is a new IIM as compared to an old IIM? There are so many questions which people have. So we thought, why not try to answer all of this, and try to answer what are the metrics which you should look at while selecting a B school. And for that, we've tried to call people from all the top B schools of India, apart from IIM ABC. So, without wasting further time, let me invite our wonderful panel to introduce themselves. Let's start with our oldest, participant, which is Ashi.
So hi, excited to be here for this discussion. I'm sorry about the background noise. Yeah, so I'm Ashi and I've graduated from MICA with an MBA in marketing, and I've recently joined Godrej Consumer Products in the e-com marketing division. And like every MICAN, I'm excited about all things marketing.
Great, thank you, Ashi. I think you are here for the 4th or 5th time. So keep contributing to Inside IIM as you always do. Right, let's go with Ashank next.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Ashank Ambe. I'm a chartered accountant by qualification. Post that, I worked for close to 3 years with Nomura, and then I did my MBA from SPJIMR Mumbai in finance. And currently, so I'm a 2021 pass out, and I just joined PwC in the management consulting division a month back. So yeah, looking forward to a great chat.
Lovely, thank you, Ashank. Thank you so much. Let's start with then Mrinmoy, and I hope I pronounced your name right.
Yes, you pronounced it absolutely right. So, hello everyone. Mrinmoy this side. I'm an engineer. I was previously working with Deloitte for 3 years, and currently I'm a student of IIM Kozhikode, and I'm interested in marketing domain.
Great, thank you so much. Now let's add some international flavor to the conversation. That we also have Ravi. Why don't you go next?
Hi guys. Am I audible though?
Yes, you are audible.
So I'm a chartered accountant. I had a work experience of 4 years, like before I went on to do my MBA from Lancaster University, UK. So post my MBA, I'm a 2020 graduate. I'm working with Akshay. So we work in Deloitte in transaction advisory, M&A. That's about me.
Great. Okay. Neil, why don't you go ahead next?
Yeah. So I'm Neil Ostwal, and I've done my MBA from IIM Kozhikode, batch of 2021. And before that, I'm a chartered accountant and I've cleared 1 level of my CFA. And I'll be joining Bajaj FinServ in their Young Leaders program very soon. Glad to be part of this show and to add some value to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thanks a lot. And I would say, Sparsh, why don't you go ahead?
Hey folks, this is Sparsh. I am a chartered accountant, company secretary, ranker in both, no work experience and then joined FMS. I've been working for a year in Bank of America in transaction services, and it is not same as transaction advisory. So yeah, that's about me.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So yes, guys, can you hear me now clearly?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So now that, so as you've seen, We have people from SPJIMR, we have people from FMS, from MICA, from an international university, from IIM Kozhikode, from IIM Bodh Gaya. We have quite a diversified panel. So without wasting further time, let's dive to the first question. I want to ask each of you, what are the metrics which you looked at while selecting your B school? And it could be anything. It could be brand, campus, return on investment, placements, or are there any other factors which you considered? Anybody can start.
So, hi, Akshay, should I go?
Yeah, okay? Please go ahead, please.
Yeah. Just to give context, I had converts from IIM Kozhikode and SPJIMR, and of course, choosing between the two was very difficult task, no doubt about that.
Right.
So for my evaluation, I had broadly divided my metrics into roughly divided them into two parts. One is the primary metrics that were very important for the decision, and of course the secondary metrics. So in terms of the primary metrics, I think there were 4 to 5 important things. First is definitely the placements. And in terms of placements, whether the, not just the companies coming to campus, but for what roles they came, talking to seniors about that, not just referring to the placement reports. Because I was not very sure of what I wanted to do, but it was either something related to investment banking or management consulting. So that was the broad idea before I came to B school. So whether the placements offered aligned with that or not was an important consideration for me. Another thing was the brand, definitely, the alumni base, how old the institute was. And definitely the return on investment, because this is a big decision. You're paying 20-25 lakh to be in a top B school. So no doubt you have to think a lot about that. One very important thing for me that might not hold for others was campus life, because being a chartered accountant, experiencing a great campus life was one of the important priorities for me at that point of time. And that is one thing that I wanted to experience. Last but not the least, I also looked at some of the MBA rankings like NIRF, Inside IIM Zone rankings, and some top business magazines. Although they might not play a very pivotal role, but it's good to have an idea of where the B school stands in terms of rankings. Some of the other secondary metrics. So when I say secondary metrics, these were primarily, I mean, more because both the B schools were very close in terms of the primary metrics. So then it comes down to some of the secondary metrics, which includes whether it's a generalized or a specialized course. Like IIMK was generalized MBA, while SPJIMR has specializations. Then, of course, the batch size. Of course, SPJIMR had a smaller batch size versus an IIMK, which had a much larger batch size. And definitely the Forex program, the intake of the number of students, the affiliations with foreign universities. So these were some of the broad factors I looked at. Of course, there was no one factor which was the kind of the clinching factor for me. But the broad level, I think it was a very close call, and then I decided to go ahead for IIMK, mainly because of the campus life and the IIM tag, which I think we can.
Actually, great points raised by you, Neil. First of all, I want to apologize for switching off my video. I'm having some network issues here, but I think great points raised by you. Firstly, obviously placements are, and we hope that IIMs do release a much better and probably an audited placement report soon, and they stop away with the practice of releasing, placement reports without getting audited. Secondly, as one thing which you said, that as a CA, definitely we have not experienced campus life, and that is something which I relate. And also good points like batch size, Forex, and these foreign affiliations. Why doesn't anybody else go ahead next?
So I can go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah. So, when you're deciding to get an MBA from outside of India, there are a few things that you need to consider. Beginning with accreditation. Is your MBA recognized as an MBA in India? Because you got to have a backup plan. So I did my MBA from Lancaster University, which is quadruple accredited. So your MBA is recognized in US, in Europe, as well as in India, Association of MBAs. I think mostly all universities in India, they follow AMBA's accreditation. So that's important. And also, most people from India, they venture into EU and UK for the MBA, thinking it's for a year. Like, you get an MBA within a year. So it's like a tailor-made program. You can finish it in 12 months, 15 or 18 months. So I decided to do it in 12 months. But the point is, like, your preparation for the MBA starts a lot in advance. Like, so to give an example, your batch would start from September, but you'd be applying for internships and all that, which ends in November. So you only have 2 months, and you wouldn't be in place to, like, fill in your CVs, write cover letters and all that in a span of 2 months. So your preparation starts a lot in advance. So you got to do the homework. Besides, as Akshay and Neil mentioned, campus life was a very important part of my decision, because I'm a chartered accountant as well. Like, and Lancaster University has amazing campus life. So we have close to 12,000 students. It's a massive, massive campus. So that was important. And we also look at return of investments. Like, when you're getting your MBA from outside of India, you got to have certain years of work ex. So, like, I had 4.5 years of work experience. So, like, when you're stepping out and you're dropping your work and then you're going for a full-time MBA, you got to factor the opportunity cost to the overall cost of the MBA. And despite the scholarship and everything, one thing that you can't obviously negate is the stay expenses. Like, cost of stay, housing and all that is very expensive. It's extremely, it's a vital part of your overall expense. So that is also need to be factored in when deciding, like, the ROI of the MBA and stuff like that.
Great point. So in respect to the opportunity cost, I would like to agree, because where you are presently and where you want to reach, those two needs to be compared. So in case of me, I didn't really went on to for the placement part of it, because the companies that were coming onto it, I was more or less more than qualified to join them beforehand. It was just about the wholesomeness of the experience in terms of what the program has to offer. And as you all being CAs as well, you understand that there's always a comparison drawn between CA and MBA. So that quality, that presentation skills that one has, or rather how one feels the pressure and kind of deliver into that becomes an important metric. Another important metric was the relationships and the networking. So I was in FMS. I knew each and every folk amongst my 200 people batch, 200 people senior, 200 people junior. So that creates a network, a personal relationship, which one can nurture. I got a convert from other IIMs as well, not from ABC, but from all other IIMs. I was not really looking forward to them because of this reason. Plus, Delhi was closer to home. So if there were any responsibilities, etc., location can become a critical point when you have to take care of your family as well. So that became an important consideration for me as well.
Actually, two, three very interesting points raised by you, Sparsh. Firstly, relationships and network. Yes, it is definitely easier to people. Still, sometimes when people ask me that this guy was from a batch, right? Sorry?
You're breaking up.
Oh. People. So it's almost impossible to speak to everyone, at a point of time. But and another interesting point being that Delhi was close to your house, and hence you prefer. Why don't anybody else go ahead next?
So I'll go ahead next.
So
Yeah. You want to take over? I can go ahead after you.
No, it's fine.
Okay. So I'm talking more from like a specialized MBA perspective, and adding to what's been already said about PGDM, like whether your MBA is recognized otherwise. And that's an important thing because while an IIM might offer you an MBA degree, other B schools offer you a PGDM, or in case of MICA, it offers you a PGDM C degree, which is not recognized as an MBA outside of India. So that's one point to consider. However, I was okay with the fact that I wanted to work in India for a couple of years before I probably might look for opportunities abroad. For me, it was largely, and based on the intended specialization, and because I was sure I wanted to specialize in marketing, So then I really sort of, looked at, and one reason for choosing MICA for me especially was curriculum. Like a lot of people may not look at curriculum when they look at general B schools, etc. But when you look at the specialized MBA, you definitely look at, curriculum and like what are the subjects being offered, faculties and such stuff like that. Other than that, another thing was dream companies. So going through the placement report for the past 3 years to understand whether, my dream companies in marketing, do they hire from this campus or not, and then dream roles. So like these were the first 3-4 important criteria, and the other was like more like miscellaneous opportunities in terms of networking or like the bad sides, etc. And that's, already being covered. Yeah.
Great. So, Ashi, you actually went through the curriculum.
Yeah. And this sort of helped me in my interviews also. So whenever they would ask me, why do you want to choose a MICA over any other B school, I could talk about the curriculum, because how that curriculum nurtures you, it has a special niche for itself. So that's like one of the biggest selling point for MICA. So I did go through the curriculum before joining the B school.
I'm sure the PGP would have loved you, because most people only look at the placement report, but you actually went through the curriculum as well. And I think that is great. I mean, especially if you are very, very clear that you want to get into marketing, then it is important that you know what you are going to be taught, etc. Before making that decision. Right. Mrinmoy, why don't you go ahead next?
Yeah, sure. So I think I sail in the same boat as Ashi was sailing, because when I left MBA, and my entire objective of going for MBA was to get into the world of marketing. So I was in Deloitte, and I really wanted to move to the marketing world. And so when I when I was in that phase of selecting an B school, so I did look at the placement report and saw that what are the specific companies which are the opportunities that are coming for specifically a marketing role, and as well as I looked at like what are the courses that are being taught, and is the faculty good, especially in the marketing domain. So these were very important factors for me, because I knew that I am not going to choose any other domain, because I was very much sharp in my very pinpoint objective I had. The other thing I would say that I did look at ROI as well, because my parents were retired when I went for MBA, when I chose to go. So my parents were retired, and finances were actually an important part for me to look at. And I also didn't want to go with a heavy loan. So that is why I definitely looked at the ROI value as well.
Great. Actually, I think most of the people on the panel have mentioned ROI as a very, very important factor. So, we'll definitely delve into it later on how we calculate the ROI, because I think it's quite interesting, the methods which people use to calculate the ROI. Okay, thank you, Mrinmoy. Ashank, why don't you go ahead next?
I wanted to put a point. Sorry, Ashank. Here, in relation to what Ashi and Mrinmoy mentioned, just wanted to say that specialized course versus a general course becomes an important criteria in selecting a B school as well, because many of the folks who are fresher, or many of the folks who have not really experienced the other domain, can't do a selection based on just what they've heard, because one domain comprises of many subdomains, and you cannot really select, yes, this is what I want to do, unless you're completely sure, you're thoroughly researched. I'll say it will be better to go for a generalized MBA, because you'll get an experience, you'll get your interest, you'll get to interact with many folks who are into that position where you want to be. So selecting a general MBA versus a specialized MBA would also become key metric for the evaluation. Sorry, Ashank, please go ahead.
100%. I think a specialized versus general MBA is, I think specialized MBA, we are starting to see many more colleges now offering specialized MBA. I think if someone is very clear that he wants to get into a particular domain, maybe he can go for colleges like SPJIMR, where you have specific programs. For example, if I tell you that in our campus, if a chartered accountant even wants to go into marketing, I think there is a good chance he might not enter into it, because of the fact that he'll get placed before, because consulting and finance companies, come earlier. So, slightly different on this. But if you are very clear that you want to do something,
I can very well understand that or relate to it. I did my majors in marketing with minors in strategy and finance. I wanted to general management, but got placed much before that, before the company come into the campus. So yeah, very well relatable point.
Right. I mean, I remember when I got a recent query that does the XYZ company come, from a chartered accountant, that does XYZ company come to campus? That is my dream company. And I told them that even if they shortlist you, there's a good chance that you might not even be able to sit for the interview because they come a bit late. So, I think those are some things of a B school which you can only understand if you talk to someone inside or someone who will be there. Okay, great. Ashank, sorry to keep you waiting so long. Why don't you go ahead next?
Yeah, no worries, guys. So I think Sparsh, Neil, and Ravi have covered most of the points. Like for a person coming from a CA background, they have covered probably almost all the points. Just a few that I would like to mention. Like Neil, I think for me, hostel life was one of the priorities because I hadn't stayed away from my family, and I think hostel life gives you builds a lot of skills which help you become independent in the future. And plus, like interacting with people from different backgrounds. Like as we all know, most of the students in MBA colleges are like, there's a majority of them are engineers. So they have already had a certain kind of hostel life. So like interacting with them and learning from their experiences, that was one of the factors. That wasn't a deal breaker as such, because obviously when you enter an MBA, like when you want to get into an MBA program, you have certain expectations. Like for a CA, probably you would only look at the top 10 to 12 top B schools. Otherwise, like beyond that point, it doesn't make much of a sense doing an MBA. Also, two other things which I had considered was the alumni base of the college. So for that, I think the year in which the college was established played a major role. Like that's why what we consider the older IIMs in very high regard as compared to the newer IIMs. Also, like one point which I would like to highlight here, which is especially important in the current scenario, is like talking to the current students in the batch, because as we know, like the MBA is shifting more to an online model, and like because of the pandemic. So speaking to current students and getting a hang of what are the kind of roles on offer, what are the companies coming to campus, and because what I've seen is people merely ask about the dream companies like probably BCG or HUL, and those roles are very few in number, so probably like 5 to 10 in number. But people are not, people don't focus on the median or average which a person might get once he gets into his MBA process, into his placement process. So I think a person needs to go into much deeper detail as to like what kind of roles are on offer, what are his own aspirations, what does he want to get into, so as to make a better decision. So speaking to current students, I think is very important. And I think LinkedIn plays a very good role in that. Like it's very easy to connect, just drop a message to current students. And I think probably if you message 10 people, at least there would be 2 or 3 would reply. So yeah, that was.
I completely agree with you, Ashank. I think most people, would reply because, whenever someone gets selected to the college which you've been to, you develop a soft corner for it, for that person. I mean, at least that's what happens with me. So whenever someone says, I got a convert from IMK, I definitely do reply, even if I might not reply if someone gets a convert from any other college, because then you get develop a soft corner for them. Great. Right. So let's take, and one more important point which you raised, and which was even raised by Neil, that apart from the dream companies, also look at the roles which are on offer. Because even when, let's say, to take an example of Accenture, even when Accenture Strategy comes to campus, they offer 2 roles. One is proper consulting and one is tech consulting. So you need to be aware of what roles are on offer, and that you will only get to know if you talk to your seniors. Right. So now let's take one of the questions from the audience members, which is from Jack Sparrow. I'm sure that's his real name. He has asked that I'm having 6+ years of experience in IT, products and services. How shall I select a B school based on the experience I am having? Anybody wants to take a stab at this?
So I can go. So like,
Sure.
I would say like, since you have 6 years of work X, like, you're in a much better position to get converts from top B schools outside of India. Like, they the minimum work X that they need is 4 years. So like, they wouldn't entertain you like if you have anything less than 4 years. So I think you've got 6, which is nice. Like, so you can, like, with a good GMAT score, let's say anything above 700, or because they have caveats on the number of people that they can actually hire from India. So you need a 700 score regardless, like at the university you're applying. So I think you can look at that, and then depending on what your aspirations are, what your goals are, where do you want to be placed and all that. One thing that I want to highlight is college they don't offer placements. So you decide your own course, like where you want to venture. They offer career service, like most colleges offer your career services lifetime, like for your entire lifetime, but they don't offer placement. So look into that.
And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, so I was saying that in terms of B schools in India, having a larger work X for a regular MBA is somewhat counterproductive, to be honest. So you will be at par, or maybe, so okay, so from the company's perspective, it is like that you are into a role for quite some time. Now, are you flexible enough to learn something new? Are you flexible enough whether you can adjust into the new role? Are you flexible enough that you can start from the bottom and then move ahead? So these considerations become an important part of the placement process, and sometimes you may lag behind the freshers, even the freshers. So going for an executive MBA, if you have a 5 years experience, makes much more sense. Or do not increase your expectation way too much if you still want to go for a regular MBA, so that it doesn't hurt you at a later stage.
Definitely, I think executive MBA can surely be looked at. Ashi, I think you were also saying something, right?
I was speaking on similar lines about considering an executive MBA because, I think 2 or 3 years work experience prior to MBA for a 2-year program is like the sweet spot. Anything more than that tends to become counterproductive, especially from like a placement perspective, where you might not be shortlisted by a few companies because of the reason that was mentioned. So that's about it.
Right. And I think then there's also a slight disconnect with your batchmates, because I see the average age, at least in most B schools, is 24. With 6 years, you will probably be at 29, 28, 29, which will slightly have, you might have slight issues when you are interacting with your batchmates as well. All right. So now let's move to the most important topic, which is ROI. Everybody has said that they looked at ROI. Now there are hundreds of ways to calculate ROI. And I think Sparsh will have the best answer to this, because he's from FMS, and FMS, the biggest attraction for FMS is ROI. So guys, how did you calculate ROI? How do you think ROI should be calculated? Should we only look at 3 or 4 months, 3 or 4 years, like a payback period, or should we look at an entire 20-30 year career? Because I think that is more accurate.
So Akshay, I feel like the
Yes,
short run would be a better way to calculate this ROI. Why? Because after a particular point in time, or rather after the platform, your first job will define where you'll be moving and the hike that you'll be getting, rather than which school were you from. If the companies that are coming to the campus on the first job are different, drastically different, means or the profiles are different, then you may want to think from a longer term perspective. However, when it comes to top 5 B schools, top 6 B schools, the level of companies or the kind of roles that they offer are somewhat similar. ABC might have a niche towards consulting. I agree. Means consulting, finance, as the case may be. I agree. So that from that point in perspective, I'll say yes, longer term ROI makes sense. However, in case of other IIMs or B schools, it makes more sense to calculate from a shorter period. The reason because of what I mentioned. Also, how to calculate it? It's fairly simple in terms of normal. So you'll need to include all your expenses rather than just the tuition. People tend to ignore certain factors, for example, the stipend, when they try to calculate the ROIs. So that is also needs to be considered, because you're earning something. Then what is your means? how much can you afford really with the experience? Because a non-campus life versus a campus life, again, a huge level of, so for example, if I compare with IIM an IIM and an FMS, obviously there is no campus life in FMS because we do not have a campus. However, that doesn't mean that I'll be spending like 18-20 lakhs just for having that campus life. So that depends on your personal background, personal preferences, and how you enjoy that MBA life is up to you. So even after not having that campus, one can enjoy, because it's like the whole North Campus where the people are staying in different flats becomes the campus. So yeah, short-term tenure and your family background, your background as to how much you can spend for the experience.
Actually, someone has messaged opportunity cost as well, and I think that is also very interesting. If you're already earning let's say 8 or 10 lakh rupees an annum, I think that also should be factored into the calculation. What do you think?
So I think it becomes very important that what is the money that you are getting previous to joining an MBA. That becomes a very important part in considering that what is the amount that you will also get after that. So the difference needs to be bigger. And if you are choosing to ignore that difference, then make sure that is supplemented by some other factors that are important for you. Like it may be that you want to change your role, you are in a domain that you are not interested in and you want to change your domain, you want to change the way your career is progressing. Then maybe that that less difference between your previous job and your post MBA job will make sense. But otherwise, it is important if you do not have any such very strong points to drive your decision, then I think there should be a good gap at least, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to make a shift, and that can be a question to you when you are applying for your summer internships or your placement. That may be a question that you were working for such and such company and you are now, what was your decision? So that can be a question for you.
I think I just want to add a few things to Mrinmay's point. So like she mentioned about the role change. So like if you're a CA in an auditing role, just for example, and if you're getting into the oldest IIM, that is A, B or C, and you're probably most likely to end in the front office of a MNC IB or MBB consulting firm, and then it's a no-brainer to go for an MBA, because the role and the pay jump both are huge. But let's say you go to the next tier of these schools, and in that case, if you're already earning 10 to 12 lakh per annum, in that case, you have to consider the likelihood of the role change that you can get. So let's say in IIM, KI or SPJIMR, no doubt the MBB firms do come, but the hiring numbers are definitely lower. So you need to see align your profile, and you need to see whether you do have a realistic shot of getting into these roles. And if you don't get into these roles, then what is the next best alternative that you can get into? And if let's say the next best alternative is let's say 16 lakh per annum fixed salary job, and the role is not so much of a drastic shift, and I mean, if you're okay with your current role, then you might as well consider giving CAT one more time or probably doing something else. So I mean, it's a very individualistic kind of thing on a case-to-case basis, and there's no straight jacket answer, I think.
I agree to that point. And also to add to that, the probability of shifting from the role that you are doing to the role you want to do, whether you can do offline change rather than doing an MBA, can you switch companies and move to that role? How probable is that should also be considered while you're considering for that MBA. But that question becomes whether you want to do an MBA or not, rather than after you've chosen that you have done an MBA, means you're going to do an MBA.
So just adding to this, I have a slightly different perspective in terms of ROI. I was not majorly looking at what is the CTC that's being offered on hand, but like dream roles that I might get, probably like a brand strategist or stuff like that. Because usually in marketing and all these FMCG companies, they usually come for, sales role, and then you probably have some years in sales and then you move to marketing or stuff like that. So I think in the longer run, it tends to even out. Your starting salaries may not matter so much, but the role that you might start with is much more difficult to change. I think you might still get like a high jump or, like that. So do consider the roles also that are being offered on hand for each of the companies that you're looking at. So to me, that was more important than just the immediate CTC that I'll be getting.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that. So Sparsh, Neil, and Ashi, you just mentioned about the shift, the shift from what you were doing before your MBA to what you're doing after your MBA. So I'm a living example. So I was into financial services before my MBA, and I wanted to venture into M&A consulting post MBA. So sometimes it's okay to take a hit on your salary. The jump wouldn't be as exorbitant as you would have thought, but you need to chalk out the larger picture. And also, any money that you spend on education, the NPV is always positive. From a CA standpoint, and NPV is positive regardless. Then you need to factor your payback period. So what is your payback? How soon do you want to break even? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Or is it 7 years? So those things come into play. But be rest assured, if you're getting your MBA degree done, MBA done from a top tier institutes, like tier 1 colleges in India or tier 1 colleges elsewhere, your NPV is positive regardless.
Ravi, you answered like a true CA plus MBA, talking about NPV payback period. Great, but great answers. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's look at another question, which is, I think a very underrated thing is looking at domain-specific placements. So even if you look at IIM ABC, if you're very sure that, let's say you want to go to finance, maybe one particular college is better. Yeah. Or for example, in consulting also, maybe IMK would be better than MDI, or maybe in marketing, MDI would be better. Specific placements of a college and then deciding whether you want to. Important is that. Or do you think maybe just going?
Sorry, actually, we lost you there. Your voice has been breaking for quite some time now.
Okay. Sorry for that. Let me repeat the question. I think the very thing is
it's still breaking.
I guess Akshay wanted to ask whether we want to look into the sector or the domain-specific placements or normal kind of placements, rather than taking an overview of the placement report. We are going to get into one step lower than that. Is that correct, Akshay, or were you asking something else?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, so anybody wants to start, please go ahead.
Just like one small point, an interesting take here is that a lot of people think that it does not matter what is your specialization that you're going to, as long as you're getting to the top tier institute. So somebody who might not intrinsically be interested in an HR, if they get a TIS HR or like an Excel HR, they may not really, for them it's like okay. So I think this is an underrated thing to sort of look at your domain specific, ROI or what is that's on table offered. Because in the longer run, your career is going to be on that particular field that you choose to go ahead with. So it's a flawed perspective to just look at MBA college and its ranking and go ahead with that particular decision. Yeah. Now you can go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point here. This question is, I think, very relevant to SPJIMR, since in the case of SPJIMR, you already make a choice as to what will your specialization be when you enter the college. So for those who don't know, the first year is common for everyone. It's like a general management thing. And the second year is when you do the specialization program of your choice, like marketing, finance, information management, or operations. So I think it is, especially for those getting into SPJIMR, it becomes very important to set what kind of expectations you have. So for example, if someone wants to get into operations or suppose information management, So he has to take a deeper look at like what are the roles on offer. If he wants to get into product management, if he wants to get into technology consulting, what kind of shifts he wants post MBA. And because on an average, like in our batch, the average work experience was close to 2 years. So it becomes even more important to look at what kind of roles are on offer rather than just looking at the CTC or like what are the companies coming. Yeah.
So one more thing here to add is that people forget that doing an MBA does not offer you a clean slate. It is basically what you've done in the past, which will come into your CV, and you're going to get placement based on that. So that becomes an important thing, a key thing. So if, let's say, as I mentioned my background, if I want to get into marketing, I would not be able to because the marketing company would not shortlist me. Rather,
Right.
a fresher, a normal graduate want to enter into marketing, yes, they'll be happy to do that because they want that kind of stuff. So even if you're thinking of something, your aim is, your dream company is there, but are you a fit towards that role? That needs to be taken care of while you're evaluating the domain specific placements or the one level below to the placement report.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for the great answers, guys. Let's take a question from the audience member now. Mr. Vijay Kumar, he has 10 plus years of experience among, out of which 4 years are in UK, and he's planning to do an MBA in product management. So which one would you suggest, executive MBA or regular MBA, and why? I think I think executive MBA is the way to go, because anyways, as you can see in any top B school in India, apart from ISB, the average work ex would be around probably 1.5 2 years. So executive MBA would be the way to go. Any additions to this, but from anybody, from any of you?
So I had a cohort in my batch. He was an army veteran from US, so he had 10 years of experience in aeronautical engineering. So he was working for US Army in their aeronautical space, and that's when he decided to jump into a full-time MBA. So in colleges outside, you would have people the diversity is huge, both in terms of ethnicity as well as experience and different domains where people have worked. So I think in the UK, you can go for a full-time or an exec, whichever you opt for. There's a price difference that you need to factor. But yeah, I completely agree with Akshay. If you're deciding to get your MBA degree done from India, then I think exec is the way to go.
Great. Okay. All right. So moving on to the next question, which we had. Now, there's so much talk of brand value. I think earlier, 10 years back, probably, older IIMs had a huge brand value. But now we see that I think FMS, SPJIMR, MICA, they all enjoy almost the same brand value. So how elusive is the IIM tag right now? Do you think just on that IIM tag you can get a job in the market? Or do you think that now you do need many more things than just an IIM tag?
I think that currently that just an IIM tag won't get a job because the market is very rapidly changing and your particular skills are very important in getting into a good job, because an IIM tag may get you a shortlist at one instance from a pool of people, but when you go for an interview, the interviewer will thoroughly judge you based on your experience, your skills, and many other your emotional intelligence, your understanding. Because at this moment, a company not really looks at you as a person who will drive some goals, which it also many companies are there which also looks at culture and their specific other values as well. So I think at this moment a tag doesn't really guarantee you a good job. You need much more than that.
So I have a different perspective.
Go on, Sparsha.
Okay, thanks. So I have a different perspective here. people say that tag doesn't matter. I say it does because it helps you reach out to the alumni. And
100%.
as also discussed earlier on the call, alumni have a soft spot for the folks that are there. So how strong the alumni network is, where the alumni are, that creates major impact on onto the brand value. And second, I agree that IIM tag is there, but other brands gaining value, those are also known and they have a strong alumni network. It is just that many people do not have a background of that job environment. They feel like they have to prefer IIM just because everybody knows IIMs, and everybody means the people who are not into that job market. So if you want to flaunt, go for IIM. Otherwise, make an objective evaluation.
Correct. I think Sparsh put it very rightly. Just adding to Sparsh's point. So I think the IIM versus non-IIM debate, that is relevant to your house, to a layman, because the IIM tag is more popular. So everybody across the country knows it. But to a recruiter, I think any of the top 10, 12 or 15 B schools in the country, the recruiter knows the quality of these B schools, the alumni base of these B schools. And there is no question that if you're from a top 10, 12, 15 B school, then you will be recognized. But I think one more thing is that I think these tags and these B school brands, the tag broadly matters for the first 2 years while you're applying outside your campus. Yeah, post that, I think it takes more of a backseat. Definitely the alumni network and the credibility lasts for a lifetime. But the other 50% is your hard work, what you have done in your job and your current role. I think that will play a much more important role than just your IIM tag or the alumni base of the college.
Actually, I really want to add something here. Based on what Neil and Sparsh said, I remember when I was deciding to join a B school, for me, IIM tag was very, very important. I thought that maybe people might not even know other top non-IIM colleges, but I think after being in the industry for a couple of years, after doing my MBA, I can say for sure that they should not disregard non-IIM top colleges just because they are not an IIM. It is stupid to do that because maybe you can even get better opportunities in some of the top non-IIM colleges. And I think this myth should be stopped because only you don't know because you've not been in the industry. The industry people are very well aware of the top colleges and what quality they offer. Right.
Just a small point to
anybody
add
else wants?
Yeah. So earlier
please
the
go
IIM
ahead.
tag was more elusive because there were like only limited number of IIMs. So to get that tag, it was like a huge thing. Now with the proliferation of like a lot of IIMs coming along, this tag is no longer elusive that only a certain set of, there's so many IIMs that have come up. So that's also one thing to sort of look at. I think that's where this thing has come upon, that it's not necessarily that an IIM, but yeah, of course it does give you that boost in the initial years of your career, and especially when you're also looking at abroad, because there I'm more recognized than other colleges as well.
More the we have in an audience member, asking about two things. I think
Akshay, you're breaking up again.
Did you guys look at any? Okay, this is embarrassing. Okay, Acha, tell me one thing. Another question received by the audience member. Two things. He's asked: A, did you look at rankings? Like I think Neil mentioned the inside IIM rankings, but then apart from that, are there any other rankings which you looked at? Was that taken into consideration? And secondly, are things like international immersion opportunities, are they important?
So like, if you're deciding on going global for your MBA, then Financial Times Global MBA ranking is the must. Like, that's the only ranking that you should look at. And it has, rankings for top 100 colleges all across the globe. But then you need to boil it down to the country that you're going to, so if you need to look at country specific colleges and how they rank amongst each other. So that's something that, I looked at. And what is the other question, Akshay? Your voice is breaking, so I couldn't get it.
Right. Talking about international immersion programs or rural immersion programs, I think something which SPJIMR offers.
I wouldn't be able to comment on that. So
I think I'll take a shot at that. So yeah, firstly, in terms of rankings, I think rankings is a very general way of looking at things. Like we spoke at the beginning of the session, that like looking into specifics, like what are your expectations from the college, what kind of roles are on offer. That is more relevant because for a person coming from a CA background or a person coming from a consulting IT background, the expectations might be different, and accordingly his own assessment of which college is relevant for him might be different. So I think that is more important rather than like just looking at the rankings. Secondly, yeah, coming to the question on global immersion and rural immersion, I think from what, because the thing was for me, we couldn't go to the US for the global immersion program. So for those who don't know, SPJIMR has a tie-up with a few US colleges, wherein like each specialization goes to that college, and there are 3 weeks which are conducted there. There are few courses conducted. Uh, so we couldn't go there for that aspect. But yeah, from what we have heard from seniors, that was one of the best times that they had. The kind of learning that they had in those colleges, the experience that they had in the US was unparalleled. But yeah, even in terms of rural immersion, so we went for the rural immersion. That is a very different kind of experience that we had, more of an NGO kind of environment, a different kind of skill sets that you develop. So yeah, I think that is a very good differentiator for SPJIMR. But I'm not really sure if that is one of the factors you would consider while deciding whether to go for an MBA, because your expectations might be different. What you want from an MBA might be different. So I don't think that would be like one of the top few factors which you consider.
Right. Okay. Okay. Great answers. Definitely, I think ranking could be looked at, but then I think every ranking looks at it from a different perspective. There are also things like publications which are taken into consideration, which as a student, frankly, doesn't matter to us. So be wary when you look at a ranking also. Right. 2-3 interesting questions which you received, which we'll take a stab at before we just wrap this up. One is a very interesting question by Gautam Mishra that most average placement figures for really matter.
Akshay, I think we lost you. Can you pardon?
Okay. All right. Let me repeat it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So an interesting question received by Gautam Mishra. He said that average placement figures are normally forged. So can they be trusted, or do they matter? I mean, can you use them to even calculate your ROI or for, even other purposes?
That's a very interesting question, because a lot of in the B school placement report, you'll find like joining bonuses, etc., being included, or ESOPs, etc. And and this might be like a one-time thing, or you may not even get it in hand. So it does look fancy on the outside. So a couple of IIMs do release their audited placement reports. So definitely go through that. And certainly median is much more reliable than just looking at the average that's being offered on campus. And more importantly, you need to look at sector-wise placements and just talk to people from that particular college or institute. They'll give you a more realistic picture of how the placements were really like, and like what's being offered in hand and everything. So I think talking to seniors here would really help, because they would give you a realistic picture, and definitely looking at the audited report.
I think one more factor is that sometimes the reports show the figures based on the CTC that was offered, and not really of the students who were selected. Like a company may come and offer you 50 package, and it may not actually pick students at a later stage. So
right.
These things are very some insight that can only be taken from the seniors. So it's a good idea to talk to them.
I think looking at the fixed component of the salary is one of the most important things, because it could vary wildly and be anywhere between 60 to 75% of the CTC. So for your the top 3 or 4 dream roles that you want to get into, I think you should look at apart from the roles, of course, you should look at the fixed component of the salaries if you can find out. That would be a better metric.
And while
right. And
the ROI, when you consider the median, discount it by 20%, and then do your calculation.
Definitely. Great. And do check out our video. We've released a host of videos on these topics, so please do check it out on Inside IIM. Right. So we'll take one question now before we wrap this up. From Ganesh Raj, he's asked this a couple of times and we've not answered it. He said that he's converted IIM Amritsar this year. He has 55 months of work experience in IT sector with the 10 lakh per annum package. How will the placements be should he join IIM Amritsar? And okay, let's not take it with respect to IIM Amritsar. Do you think he should join any newer IIM or any tier 2 college?
So I'll take a stab at it.
Sure.
Right. Please go ahead, Sparsh.
Okay, so considering this pandemic, considering it's going to be an online MBA, considering that you have only 5 months of experience, I believe that it will be wise to continue your job at this point in time and try to give it another stab, because the MBA is more about the experience that you gain while also placements are very important metric towards it, but the whole experience, nobody wants to miss that. So if you can postpone your decision, I'll say please do.
Sparsh, I think you mentioned 55 months of experience, right, Akshay?
Yes, 55 months. 55 months.
Oh, sorry, I heard 5 months. My bad.
It's my audio. It's not your problem.
Since he has 55 months of experience, I would suggest that he should take another stab at MBA if it is possible, because since he has such a huge number of experience and his current CTC is also largely good. So going for an MBA which is not present in the top list of the B schools would not be a very wise decision at this current stage in a pandemic, I would say that.
And definitely looking at executive MBA, specifically speaking from the perspective of the work ex that he has.
Right. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. I think what has emerged is there are many metrics which you can look at while judging a B school. If you look at the answers received from all the people, you start with the ROI, the campus life, the placements, not only looking at the placement companies, but also looking at the roles which are on offer. Ravi also mentioned a very interesting point that he also looked at the certifications or the recognition which the college had, speaking about AMBA, and looking at, obviously, we also need to look at networks. We also had a great discussion on specialized versus general MBA. And we hope that all these points really helped you in your decision to decide whether you want to join a particular B school or not. Thank you so much to all the panelists, Ravi, Neil, Sparsh, Ashank, Mrinmoy, and Ashi. And apologies on my end that my net really started. Definitely this won't happen from the next time. Thank you so much, panelists, and thank you to all the people who tuned in, and we really hope this helped you. Goodbye, guys. Thank you once again, the panelists.
Thanks, Akshay, for hosting us.